This grow is grim and there's obvious signs of contamination due to patchy growth of the mycelium throughout the substrate, though despite this a massive oyster mushroom was still able to grow. So this made me think perhaps the genetics in this particular fungus are more resilient to pathogens. So I'm going to sacrifice this mushroom and take some tissue samples in order to try and carry on this line of genetics. But before I attempt to clone this mushroom and take tissue samples, I first drown it in 70% isopropyl alcohol in order to try and kill off any bacteria or any sorts of contamination on the outside of the mushroom, and I leave that to sit while I prep the rest of my equipment. Once my scalpel is sterilised, I move it into my clean working area. I then sterilise the agar pots that I prepared earlier on. Even though this mushroom was soaked in 70% iso alcohol, it's still guaranteed to have contamination on the outside of it. I pull the mushroom apart instead of using a blade to cut it because this would possibly drag outside contaminants into the clean flesh on the inside. Now that my scalpel's flame sterilised, I move on to obtaining the piece of tissue from inside the mushroom. This part I actually really struggle with because I've got crap eyesight and it's hard to tell if I've actually got a piece on the end of my scalpel. But worse than that, this happened. I dropped the sample, possibly exposing it to contamination, and it seems I attempted to stop it falling by stabbing the sharp end of the scalpel towards my hand like a fucking madman. But despite these hiccups, I still got my first tissue sample and I transferred it to my agar pot. I then repeated the process again for the second sample. Then with both tissue samples collected, I decided to just give the mushroomy bits a sniff because why not? I then realised that I had left the contaminated jar on the desk the whole time that I was working, and I really shouldn't have done that, but oh well, it's too late now. I seal the lids with grafting tape to reduce the chances of airborne contaminants entering the pots. I then move them into my incubator and leave them to colonise the agar. After around 5 days, I can see that there's plenty of healthy white mycelium growing, but to ensure that I have a nice healthy culture, I'm going to do an agar-to-agar transfer. So I make 2 new pots of light malt extract agar. And once they've been through the pressure cooker and sterilised, I can now set up my clean working space to do this agar-to-agar transfer. And I start that by putting my scalpel blade on upside down. Fuck, how many times am I going to do that? Anyway, I decided that I would only take samples from one of my cultures because one of them just didn't look quite right and I didn't trust it. I look for the healthiest, most vigorous growth from this culture, and then I take a sample from the leading growing edge. The problem with this kind of work, I genuinely think my brain just disengages when I've been holding an item for too long. Right, I actually ended up leaving these in the incubator longer than I wanted to, but we can see that both cultures are fully colonised and looking really healthy. I could do another agar-to-agar transfer to be really safe and make sure that they're really clean, but I think they're pretty good. The other thing I want to do is take a piece of this culture and add it to a liquid solution and make a liquid culture from it. But that is the process, and yeah, they're pretty much done, looking nice and healthy.